afternoon, Secretary General, Mr. Wamkele Mene. Welcome to UNDP, and thank you very much for sitting with us to talk about the big ideas transforming Africa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, SG. You know, a lot has been said, analyzed, understood even, about the why AfCFTA. Now is time to really look more at the what, so to speak. How do we get where we want to go? And so I'd like for you to tell us what stands out most for you as the main reasons why Africa could not afford to fail on the AfCFTA.
Again, thank you. Thank you for having me. Well, I think we have 65 to almost 70 years of being in a condition of underdevelopment in terms of industrial capacity, productive capacity. We've been on the margins of global supply chains. A case in point is what happened last year when countries imposed export restrictions on materials that we need to fight the pandemic. Africa suffered. And so the idea behind the AfCFTA is to enhance our self-sufficiency as a continent without disconnecting from global value chains. I think it's very important that we take note of countries around the world who have developed, and look at their trajectory of growth. Singapore, Taiwan. How did these countries get to the point where they are today? How did Singapore become a country that, as small as it is able to contribute over 6% to global trade and output? And whereas 55 countries contribute less than 3% to global trade and output and so on. And fundamentally, the answer is right in front of us. It's industrial development, decade after decade. So I think this question through the AfCFTA has been answered. The next big question, in my view, is what tools do we require to start the train moving? What is it that we can do? What are the instruments? And that's a very important question that you posed. We've laid the legal architecture, is laid out. Now we need the instruments to take us forward, particularly instruments that will ensure inclusivity of benefits, not only for between countries, but also in country, young entrepreneurs, small medium enterprises. These are the real questions that we should be focusing on, in my view.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. I mean, the emphasis on industrialization is critical, and the tools to get us there. There will be forces that affect how you get where you want to go. Mm-hmm. And some of them include relations with third countries.
Yes.
Others go to the core of capacity to produce, because ultimately it's a trade agreement that's creating opportunities for those who will be able to mm-hmm. produce. How do you navigate those trends that affect the success we all want?
Well, we have, the agreement is clear, at least from a trade law point of view, that countries will continue to be able to have trade relations with third countries or trade agreements with third countries, subject to certain conditions. From my point of view, the accelerator for Africa's industrialization is what we are doing already with UNDP, and that is seeking to establish these regional value chains that are inclusive, identifying the opportunities for young entrepreneurs, again, for inclusivity. Once we start accelerating the industrialization of Africa, establishment of regional value chains across countries, I think that is that's the locomotive that we need to get this agreement off the ground. Mm-hmm. Let me give you an example. If we know that you have copper in Zambia, how do we make sure that copper from Zambia is part of the processing, that there is a processing capacity in Zambia, and that Zambia becomes part of value chains for the manufacture of vehicles in Africa? Liberia, rubber. So there are different things that we can do, leveraging on the AfCFTA, to make sure that we advance our industrial development. Agro-processing also very, very critical. So I think we have a very unique opportunity to make sure that there is a difference that this trade agreement makes, and to make sure that we significantly advance our continent in a way that over the last 60 to 65 years, we may not have had the opportunity to do so. But we cannot have an AfCFTA that is implemented that benefits only the large corporations on our continent. That's not going to bring us the industrialization that we need.
Thank you for that. And you talk about regional value chains in a sense as a way to spread the breadth of who can benefit from the AfCFTA. And then women become an issue there, a point of interest there, because we know that they're a big part. Indeed, they're the heartbeat of trade, of intra-African trade. What do you have in mind for the women? What can they expect in terms of strengthening their capacity to seek the benefits, to maximize the benefits in this agreement?
We already have a directive from the heads of states to negotiate a protocol on women in trade and youth in trade, to codify really all of these aspirations that we have about inclusivity, to codify that into law, into legally binding obligations, so that we see the difference that we want to see. That's the first very, very important aspect. Second aspect that we are working on is we want to mobilize trade finance specifically for women in trade who want to trade under the AfCFTA. We think it's very, very important that there is a financial component to support young people and women in trade as they trade under this agreement. I'm hoping that in the next few months, we will make an announcement along with commercial banks on the African continent about the establishment of this trade finance facility. We're also working with AfreximBank to create what we call Africa Trade Gateway, which will be a digital platform to support SMEs as they implement this agreement. And so this digital platform will have information on the market that you want to export to, rules of origin, the payments and settlement system will be there, due diligence information about your counterparty in a different part of the continent. These are the tools that are required to make this a successful implementation from an inclusivity point of view. We, of course, know that there will be, as you mentioned earlier, there are countries who are ready to export immediately under the AfCFTA to see the benefits. And these countries are the countries that are already relatively industrialized in Africa. Our focus from an inclusivity point of view is the countries that today don't have the export capacity. And that's why it's so important to work with UNDP, our strategic partner, to build pillars of inclusivity in country, whether it is young people or women in trade. We're also working to mobilize an AfCFTA adjustment facility, which will help countries to mitigate the adjustment process of implementation of the AfCFTA. And so the universe of all these tools recognizes that at the heart of what we're trying to do must be inclusivity in country and between countries, so that we can have a successful implementation of the AfCFTA.
Thank you for that. So clear plans, clear strategies, clear actions already that are taking place to make sure that women have a space, are center stage in this AfCFTA. So the first year of operationalization of this agreement has really been about setting up and strengthening the institutional arrangements that can support an effective implementation of the agreement, so that when traders are on the ground, exporters are on the ground, they get that preferential treatment that is the promise of the AfCFTA. I know you've also been working on rules of origin, but also strengthening the knowledge base through our joint futures report, which this year focused on which value chains were made in Africa. A lot of preparations in that direction on the institutions, on finalizing critical elements, and on creating world-class knowledge products. What can we expect for 2022 in your work program?
Well, we have to accelerate preparedness of countries to implement the agreement. The reality is that countries are at different levels of readiness, even those that may have ratified. They may require enhanced institutional capacity. Our customs authorities have said to us, we've hosted them in Accra several times. They have said, we need help to build our capacity as customs authorities to be able to implement the rules of origin regime, to foster industrialization through the rules of origin regime. We also have to improve export capacity, export readiness. How do we make sure that small, medium enterprises meet the SPS rules, for example, technical barriers to trade? If you are not able to meet SPS requirements, your products don't enter the market. And so their market access is empty. And so these are the practical steps that I believe in 2022 we have to take. We did a very good job with the member states of establishing a very, very strong legal foundation. It's there. The protocols are there, dispute settlement, trade in goods, trade in services. But now we need to focus on the practical aspects of trade, on creating the right conditions for traders to be able to export their goods across borders, and especially working closely with our customs authorities to make sure that our customs authorities do give recognition to preferential goods, to preferential trade that happens as a result of the agreement. So we're shifting gears, we're shifting to more practical aspects of trade.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Secretary General Mr. Wamkele Mene, for joining us on this inaugural edition of the Big Ideas Transforming Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. It was good to be with you.